Let's Talk Computer Science. I'm your host, Sandy Padala, CEO at Rex Academy. Rex Academy is a one-stop solution for computer science. Joining me today is our guest, Mr. Wendell Willis. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on our podcast.
Well, thanks, Sandy, for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, pleasure is ours. Mr. Willis is putting students in Milwaukee on a path to success. As the executive director at Milwaukee Public Schools Foundation, Mr. Willis aims to ensure that Milwaukee's public school students have access to quality education. To achieve this foundation raises funding for several different purposes, including scholarship awards, college preparation, and initiatives in STEM and experiential learning. Mr. Willis attended Northwestern University, where he earned a degree in both economics and arts. We are so excited to have you on our podcast. Let's talk about computer science.
Let's do it.
Yeah, Northwestern. Wow. That's my son's dream college. It's amazing.
It was a good time.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That's the college in the Midwest, right? So tell us about your background. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, Sandy, it's a very non-linear path. I didn't plan for this. I think maybe I started planning later in life for it, but not initially. So as you mentioned, Northwestern, I was actually art and econ major, so double major, art practice, printmaking and economics. Leaving there, I actually had an internship with an insurance company back here at home. So I'm from Milwaukee originally, went down Northwestern, came back. So as one mentor of mine said, I was doing things by default, not by design. So I was in insurance and employee benefits for about 10 years with a small, 2-year stint in telecom. And when I went back to employee benefits, I kind of made that decision. I didn't want to go from kind of insurance boy to insurance man. As I was maturing and getting close to my 30s, and a friend of mine said, you need to think about where your passions really are. And some of the work you do as your avocation, make it your vocation. And so I made the shift and was more intentional about moving into a specific set of areas in the nonprofit space. So initially, just to get my feet wet, went to Agape Community Center, a small community center on the north side of Milwaukee that focused on families aged 0 to 100 with a robust after-school program, family programs, a senior program, things like that. And I was kind of the business guy for them doing that piece. And as I said, I didn't really want to do the social service side. Of course, the person that ran the director of programs went on leave. So I ended up taking the bulk of the staff and kind of getting my feet wet and learning about nonprofit programs, learning about, really the metrics and what you're trying to achieve from that perspective, but also managing the business to really think about what is the need of the client and how does that serve the program staff on a through that business lens. And then leaving there, and again, very, very more specifically, kind of having a lot of informational interviews and conversations with people to talk about, where should I be? Because that was more of a direct service nonprofit, and I didn't see myself there. I actually had a conversation with someone who talked about a lending nonprofit or a CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution, called Ways to Work. So it just happened to be headquartered in Milwaukee, was part of a family of 4 other companies under one umbrella. But the headquarters is here, but the actual field operations were in 21, well, ended up being 22 sites or 22 states and 55 sites or cities across the country. So ended up managing that as the VP of operations and second in command there. But the operations was kind of a misnomer. I ended up learning more about how to do fundraising there, really doing a lot of community convenings and pitching a value proposition to win others over. But the goal of the organization was essentially to put families in need into vehicles kind of just in time. So it was both a financial literacy and education model coupled with getting your car loan. So it's counterintuitive, right, to go to a nonprofit and get a vehicle loan, but actually it was working out greatly across the country in a number of sites with a very low default rate. But really it was like moving families up into the socioeconomic stratosphere, into the middle class by what we were doing, because most of them experienced a significant increase in take-home pay. So then around 2015 or so, we started winding down the programmatic operations of that organization. And as I was moving on, happened to have a colleague there at one of the sister companies whose husband worked for Milwaukee Public Schools, and said, "Hey, I hear you might be looking. Are you interested in coming and talking about our COO spot?" So I was very much mentally in the mind frame of, again, I don't want to be in direct service, but do want to have as large of impact. So, working on a national level, you have a lot of impact with a number of lives, but, does that exist locally? Should I go back nationally and kind of, having time to look that over and think about it? We kind of had 3 offers. One was Milwaukee Public Schools, which I was actually intending not to take that offer because on paper, the job was not really like what I thought it should be. But then I met the superintendent and some of the cabinet members, and that conversation seemed like, at the end of the day, depending on what I was looking at, it had the most impact. It wasn't direct impact or direct service, because obviously, teachers and principals and others are doing that work, and I can make the same equivalent of, central office for NPS is kind of like the national office for Ways to Work, where you really exist to serve everybody else. And rather than having satellite offices, now I've got, schools that kind of rely on us. So the same kind of analogy was made for me. And the number of impact, having 70,000 students plus their parents, that's almost half the city or most of the city that you're impacting. So what could be a better impact than that? And having the conversation with both colleagues that I would be going into work with, and also the superintendent, to say, what would success look like early on before I decide to kind of take the assignment, and agreeing that I could shape the role into something that I'd like it to be versus, what they said on paper. So kind of with that, I had the 5 largest 24/7 departments. So facilities, business services and transportation, nutrition, recreation, and communications and marketing. So, and again, I used my lens there to be, what was the biggest operational lever I could provide for students, and how could I use that as an equity kind of tool for our students to make sure they had the resource they needed when they needed it, how they needed it. And then when superintendents changed in 2018, had the conversation about, some things they wanted to do on the academic side. So I said, maybe it'd be better for me to come over to the foundation, apply some of the tools I used, and been a better resource to, again, get opportunities and resources to our students. So that's how I am here today. But again, very nonlinear, didn't come up in a social service background per se, or formal training. It's more or less, using the transferable skills along the way to get there.
Yep. Wow. That is a story. Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit more about the roles and responsibility, not roles, like more like your goals of the foundation itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my primary goal is, like I kind of said, making sure that students can have the resources and opportunities they need when they need them. So, I think we try to look at both what our teachers, principals, other administrators within the district, whether it be the academic teams or others, saying, this seems to be what students are longing for, wanting, this is what teachers need, this is where education's going, or this is what other districts have that we don't have. And then seeing, okay, how can we get that resource to our students, whether it's on a pilot basis, whether it's on taking a pilot to permanent, putting something in permanently, or just delivering, a one-time thing that they may need. So, what I've tried to do over the last almost 4 years now and being here is saying, look, I think that there's kind of 3 primary pillars or levers that we need to be pulling. So the largest one undertaking is kind of where we're in a soft phase right now, launching a capital campaign that's all encompassing around outdoor revitalization, whether it be the schoolyards that are there or outdoor recreation spaces that our rec department is working on, and saying, how does that attach to both education, mental health, wellness, nutrition, et cetera, where that's all encompassing, because the reality is we've seen when you deliver quality outdoor classrooms or quality athletic facilities, that changes the paradigm of what's happening in education. So it could be a STEM-based curriculum, but now you go outside and actually practice your STEM instead of always being in the classroom, kind of locked down at a chair or table. The second pillar being an attachment to workforce. And we have 70,000 students, 3,000 to 3,500 that are always graduating every year. Not all are going right to college. So can we have them career ready or college ready, whichever is their path that they see them in? Can we help them be there? But then what does that look like from workforce? So having some candid conversation with our workforce partners as to what is it you need? Can we help you think about what work looks like differently? Because it's going to be much different than how I entered the workspace. So hopefully they're working on changing as we're working on changing, and saying, there's got to be attachment to the curriculum from kindergarten all the way up, because really there's a component of being in school. It shouldn't be all work, but it is work like, and it should have some fun to it. So can we make school somewhat like an Epcot, and it's fun learning, but it's attached to there's an end, there's a means to an end, and getting some of our partners to think about what does a highly engaging lab look like for literacy, for math, for science, for social studies. Every subject matter should have an engaging device, because that's how work is. If we want to be, I think this is a great time to talk about it with the number of people resigning. I think what people are saying is work has not been engaging on some level. So can we make school and work both engaging? Because then you're going to end up with a higher level of profitability and more satisfied employees and organizational culture.
Yep. Yeah, totally makes sense. I mean, everything they study, and especially they want to go into career right after, let's give them the education that prepares them for the world and be successful in the world. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So can you please talk more about your day-to-day work? Can you please walk us through a typical work day for you?
Yeah. So the one thing about being in district life is that no 2 days are typical or the same. I say, especially when I was COO, it was more of definitely not being the same then, because you get called out to school for, there could be a leak in the basement of a school, or something else could be happening, or there are a number of events that at the time we were kind of expected to attend as cabinet members, which is great, going out to schools and seeing the events that they have been putting on, or dignitaries coming to visit and see. Somewhat similar here. Again, there are, a couple of weeks ago, we had an event the last day of Black History Month, which actually is perfect for this conversation. We have a data science program next door from my building at Golda Meir School, and their data science project was measuring statistically Butch Lee, former Marquette alum, and making the case in a few weeks, does Butch Lee deserve to be in the Naismith Hall of Fame for college basketball? And so they actually made their presentation and pitched to us as a and they actually got to meet Butch Lee that day, because Marquette that weekend was doing Butch Lee weekend and honoring him. So that Monday they got to meet their subject matter, talk to him. So, again, not a typical day having to be in the office. But, I think a lot of my day revolves around having conversations with, whether it be different partners to put together programs and embedding them with our academic teams. It could be talking with funders about, where do they see things happening Milwaukee wide and how do we fit within that, or vice versa, talking to them about what's new on our plate since we had our last conversation. So like in a couple of weeks, be talking with Greater Milwaukee Foundation's Ellen Gilligan, and, just chatting with her. They launched their large capital campaign. And how do they see that tying into what we do, and how do we collaborate together on these types of things? So sometimes the day is working with funders, it's working with programmatic partners, it's with design teams. We're designing STEM camp this summer right now, an IT and esports camp. So having that conversation. Last week I got to attend the Wisconsin Esports Summit. So the first esports summit by the MKE, Milwaukee Sports Alliance, or Milwaukee Esports Alliance, put on. So it's kind of a nice, different, fun day to attend that. So again, no 2 days are the same.
Yeah.
But again, very, but you have to figure out how to compartmentalize and make sure the time is meaningful and well spent. So, also like a couple weeks ago, we had a press conference about just statewide school funding for not just MPS, but all schools, what choice charter and public, what would that look like if we had an inflationary adjustment? Where should it be today? So, really thinking about where should the foundation be used as a lever for conversation, for funding opportunities, for partnership, or just plain influence to say we should at least be in the know that this is happening.
Yep. Yeah, definitely no 2 days are same for you. It looks like every day is like something major that you can talk about.
That is true.
So switching gears, can we describe any computer science programs, initiatives that have been implemented or currently in works to increase computer science educations? And what are your goals for the next couple of years to increase computer science education?
Yeah, so right now, I'd say like pre-COVID, really was more episodic. If someone would come to us from the district side and say, we need support, whether it's tools or equipment or software, we would get involved in trying to help fund that or get that for them or bridge the partnership, really on that level. Now, I think with our turn and really kind of, I've been working on the turn pre-COVID to a more strategic focus on what does workforce look like within the district and curriculum. Having the conversation, obviously it started with COVID. We did almost $2 million in, I'll just call it IT and broadband support for COVID. So whether that be money set aside for teachers and students to get trained on a different level, dollars for broadband, so they can actually deliver that via hotspots to the district, or just certifications and badges that teachers and power users may want, or just additional support for parents so they can learn, have help desk type of support. So those three areas kind of in the thick of the COVID days, not that we're over. And then coming out of it, looking at, okay, one, like I mentioned, being a part of funding the data science program, because we're looking at it and saying, well, computer science is important. That's just, I'm seeing that as more of a one-on-one to some degree. And how do we get further than that into, not that's the building block for getting into higher level and wealthier positions down the road. So I want to make sure our students see the gambit of that, and our participants in from entry level STEM and IT careers all the way up to the highest level. And I want to make sure they can access where they want to be, not where necessarily it's great that employers need the roles in certain places, but I don't want them slotted just because an employer needs them. I want it to be a mutually agreed upon thing where the student sees himself in that role, they find it fulfilling and meaningful. And if they want to go higher than kind of step one with just coding, then they can do that, not that they're stuck there and that's where they're going to remain. So, I think being very intentional about what are all the roles in IT, what are all the roles in tech, how can we augment that? So this summer, a lot of just conversation around what is IT, because I think when you say it, students don't really know that. So for our summer school component and friends, what we're trying to do is get a number of professionals just to be in the conversation and do like we're doing today. They can either physically be there, but if physically that is a barrier, they can always drive and see that person, which can be great too. But if they can't drive and see, then they can do it virtually like we're doing now. So, have the either or component depending on what's better for that professional. But having the conversation as to what do I do in IT? What does that day look like? And what was my path to get there? So that's kind of an intro piece 101. The second level is we're actually building a couple of STEM camps. One in particular that has an attachment with Esports and intro to IT, and you get a certification and badge. So that's for our freshmen and sophomores, kind of as they're rising and coming through, because we want them to be able to attain an internship or apprenticeship their junior and senior year. So again, that ready attachment to employment, and they'll get, early training so they can apply it when they get to the workplace early. So then as they graduate, someone can't say, well, you don't have any experience, right? We want them to have that early. And then the other part of the conversation is working with employers to say, yes, they're early in, they don't have the great experience yet, but give them the internship or apprenticeship so they're ready for you upon graduation. Or if they decide to go in further with post-secondary, they can be back to you again. It's only a short matter of time.
Yep. Yeah, totally agree. I really like that you're going to do what does IT mean? Like, I mean, me with all computer science and like technology background, for me, like AI, cybersecurity, gaming, everything is part of computer science. So like that's how we like the core even in our company, when we talk to different people, they think differently. Like when I talk to computer science grads, like who are all computer science grads like me, for us, whether it's data science, cybersecurity, gaming, it's all computer science for us. So because we study all of that as part of becoming computer science. But yeah, that's very critical because a lot of places, even within our company, we teaching computer science. Like some of our team members say coding as a different entity, like it's all computer science. Yeah. So it's very important. I think we should also have that kind of conversation in our company. So unlike like some subjects, computer science, as you pointed out, it's ever changing, right? Like before, data science wasn't there, but now data science is part of it. Cybersecurity was very different when I was in college. Now it's very different. Like gaming was very different. Now it's very different. So it's constantly changes and requires one to keep updated on the latest trends, technologies, and languages. Even the languages themselves constantly change. So, and computer science also encompasses wide range of topics like we are talking, like software development, cybersecurity, AI, and so it's wide and it constantly changes.
Right.
So, in addition to that, like, I mean, on top of that, like teachers are leaving in general, and there's already a huge shortage of computer science teachers, and the few teachers like you can count on single digits, computer science teachers, they are also leaving. So with all of this, what's going on, and many CS instructors right now who are teaching computer science, they don't have background in computer science or lack the competence to teach the subject. So in these situations, do you think teachers can benefit from having support from a technical expert?
Absolutely. Teachers, I think, I would say not only teachers, but I think districts and the methodology of all teaching has to at least be rethought or reconsidered, right? I think the traditional methods that we've been using don't always suffice. So you and I were brought up into sitting in a classroom with rows. That's not how you do your job. That's not how you get effective work done. So why are we still doing that 1850 construct for most of education, right? The districts or classrooms that seem to do better are where almost desks are eliminated to some degree, or there's a level of collaborative work happening. So shouldn't teaching be somewhat the same with it's not a one way or the other. It could be an and. Are we using a number of tools and resources? So to your point, teachers are leaving, or they're just not fast enough being, their background doesn't match, or they're not getting the background that they need fast enough to match what's happening in the world to teach the student that they're looking with. So can you use an online resource, whether it be a virtual resource, to augment that and that virtual person? We've done it early with other subject matters. So let's say if there's an AP English class at one school, the other school would like to offer it, but can't find a teacher, you could video that person in from Riverside to, let's say, Marshall High School. That's great. We just have to make sure there's a good kind of steward in the room for classroom management, right?
Engagement,
and that piece has to be there. So when we've seen that happen, it can definitely work. I think the other thing is, could we be thinking about this differently? Can we use, we've talked about, can we use adjunct professor type models, right? Where it's maybe you can get somebody from a higher ed institute because their day isn't completely full. If we can work it around their schedule and our need, can you have that? And we've done that with an MATC with many of the trade programs, right? We borrowed their trade instructor versus having someone paid in the district, and we just give them a stipend that augments what they're doing there. So now it's not a full salary, it's not benefits. It's a great method of, it's
they're not working full time, so
right. Yeah. And it's a win-win, right? Like that person at MATC may say, well, I wouldn't mind doing like a younger population for a while. We've talked about, could you get somebody that's in robotics at a Rockwell or another organization videoing in or coming in their off time to work with our students, and that being an adjunct type of role. Again, if they know that for one semester, it's every Tuesday, Thursday at this time, I'm sure Rockwell Automation knows how to manage their employee, and that employee knows how to manage their life where they can come in. So, there are a number of tools and ways to get it done. Or let's say, again, if the person's somewhere where it's inclement weather or whatever, they can still video in with us. But I think we've got to look at how many different methodologies can we scope out that could be win-wins, assuming we can think a little bit differently about how to deliver the curriculum and the resource to our students.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. It's very commendable, like with the size that MPS is, like figuring things and doing out of the box, like innovation in teaching. That's super impressive. So my next question is also kind of related to that. Finding qualified educators to teach computer science is becoming a challenge for many schools across the country, and especially our state. We graduated 5 computer science teachers in the past 5 years. That's what Dr. Brilo has told me.
Yes.
So should schools consider hiring remote computer science teachers to address the shortage? What are your thoughts on that?
I think definitely, right? We should think about every option, and that's one of the options every school should definitely, or every district should definitely be looking at. Is it remote? Is it, again, a modified version of remote? But whatever it is, definitely, I think we're at a point for not only computer science, I think almost every subject matter, that we rethink how do we rethink employment of teachers or deployment of resource into a classroom. We've got to use every tool at our disposal at this point, because I think, to your point, computer science is a specialized teaching tool and resource and function. So I think for any of our specialty functions, we're definitely at a disadvantage, whether it be art, music, language, et cetera. We've gone to flying people in from Spain and Puerto Rico and other places just for language. That's how desperate we are. So I think that if we're doing it, that means other districts are doing it as well. And, I think we've got to make sure that we can balance, what's the right type of experimentation, piloting, and then making sure it works. But if we can find models that work for remote teaching, we definitely should be employing those models and using them.
Yep. Yeah. Awesome. I love it. I mean, I love how innovative you think and able to implement at MPS. So what do you think? I know I'm very focused on computer science just because of the podcast, but I'm loving like your other analogies. So keep at it. So what are the ideal solutions for resources that are needed to help improve or increase computer science education? I mean, when I say computer science, it's like a broad umbrella of everything technology.
Well, I think it's going to be industry involvement, right? I think, if you think of what education was like in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, there was a lot of industry involvement because obviously there was a focus on math, there was a focus on science, the space race, and really hammering that into students that math and science were very key. And we've gone away from a lot of those things, which is not completely bad, but I think there has to be some level of industry saying, these are roles that we really need. And how can we make those roles, for lack of a better term, somewhat sexy for our students to look at? And it's students generally. I mean, I have a friend at GE who talks about the number of people that they're flying in from India, Norway, Germany, etc. Why aren't those jobs being filled by students here? Nobody's engaging with them early or discussing with them what's a fulfilling career look like. And then I think the employer's got to make some changes, right? I think if we're going to be truthful, the last 40 years, many employers have been able to essentially say to the employee, this is how it is, and you're going to do it how I say it's going to be done, regardless of culture, conditions, type of work, et cetera. I think, again, if you want to, at the highest level of like capitalist republic society, if you want to make sure that you're getting the best in profitability, better companies and culture and climate include all those things. So looking at your current staff and saying, what is it that, is of value here? What could we eliminate? Let's have some real conversations about our culture and climate. So as we're pulling people in, as climate either needs to change or if it's a good climate already, if it's a great climate already, I would say you got to be attached to schools and promoting it like sooner rather than later, because you're going to have students that are going to be upbeat. And when I see it, when companies that we have are engaged, come in and talk about, hey, this has been a fulfilling career for me, and they have tens of people coming in rather than just a couple coming into a school, boy, it makes a difference. I think, Rockwell's a great example of having made the time and going into schools and really exciting students about it. And now getting ready to build a lab just for them at one of the schools they partner with, is a significant achievement. So, if you thought of in the Southeast Wisconsin region, if every company went to every district and just said, I'm putting in one lab for me, at least at one school in every district, boy, what would that look like? And I think, again, you said computer science is a wide range, right? So within that range, there are so many companies here and everywhere else. And I'll tell you, it's very interesting working with our partners like a Verizon, who's put in 6 Verizon Innovation Learning Schools.
Awesome.
Right? They're building that commitment as we speak, right? They want those students to come because Verizon's worldwide. So, I think that it really offers the opportunity to shape what type of workforce you want to have, but also has the ability to change curriculum to be something different and to be exciting and to be engaging early on.
Yep. Yeah, totally agree with every word you have said. I mean, yeah, that should be where we are. Education 3.0, like Web 3.0, like Web 3.0, right? Yep. Any final words for our viewers?
Well, I just say, now is a great time to make investment in students. I think as we had kind of a somewhat of a pause, for the last couple of years now, and we're coming out of that, there's still a moment where, industry can help shape the future of what it looks like, and it can help its own profitability and create its own return on investment. That's the biggest thing I see. I don't, whether it be Milwaukee Public Schools Foundation, other districts, other district foundations, like my friends over in Madison have a great foundation led by Belinda Heinrichs. I think that number of places should be thinking about, number of employers should be thinking about what is going to be my return on investment. If I do this now, can I get it tenfold in just 2 or 3 years? Because again, I said, we're going to have students. Can you capture those students that are coming out that say, I don't want to go to a lot of post-secondary, but I may need some. Okay, we'll get them the training they need, get them a badge, get them a certificate with a partner, get them trained and move them into your workforce immediately, right? And then can you get them once they go to college or whatever else they're doing, can you get them after that? But make the connections now, do the work at this moment, you'll see it paying forward for you in tenfold down the road. So now's the time, don't wait to get how are you going to invest into education and make sure it pays off for you as an organization.
Yep. Yeah, totally agree. I know, like I use other companies like Northwestern, Harley Davidson, they also want to engage, and I think they are engaging in their own way. So yeah, totally agree. It's a mutual win-win situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining our podcast and giving us this wonderful information. I've learned quite a bit. And I know a lot about MPS, but still I've learned a lot more about MPS today.
Well, it's only 70,000 students and 10,000 employees. So yeah,
Yep. Yeah. It's a country on its own.
it sure is. Well, thanks, Sam. This was great talking with you. I appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you. Bye.